Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to yet another tier list video. Today I wanted to revisit the first tier list we did on my channel, which is the MCU. Obviously, a couple new shows and movies have come to the MCU ever since the last video, but also on top of that, I wanted to rank some of the other shows and movies outside of the MCU. So without any further ado, you guys know the drill, like, subscribe, all that bullshit, and let's just get right into it. Alright, so the first one up. Oh my god. Why do we never start off with a good one? Netflix's Iron Fist. Now, this show was very controversial. At first, it was because everyone thought it was just a knockoff of Arrow.
I left here 10 years old in a jet with my parents. I became the lone survivor.
My name is Oliver Queen. For 5 years, I was stranded on an island with only one goal.
And then it was because a bunch of people on Twitter thought that Danny Rand was being whitewashed because they thought Iron Fist was supposed to be Asian. And then it was because the show was just horrible. Season 1 of Iron Fist was probably one of the worst things I've ever had to watch. It just feels like never ending and it never really gets good. This adaptation of the character is completely pathetic in my opinion. I'm not a huge, massive fan of Iron Fist in the comics, but you know, I was looking forward to this show, and reading Iron Fist comics now and then looking at this show, what a disappointment. I can't imagine what it was like for people that were actually fans of the character to see this show coming out. And then season 2 comes into the picture, and then it starts off pretty good, and it was good like halfway through the season, and then it came to the end. The showrunner is Scott Buck, who has a reputation for doing things under budget, which is why studios like him and he keeps getting hired. Unfortunately, that shows. That just does not work for a superhero show. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put that in F tier. It's not good. Alright, and then next up we have the Spider-Man Raimi trilogy. Instead of ranking all of these movies individually, I am instead going to rank them as one trilogy. These movies were such an amazing leap forward for superhero movies. These are so special to so many people because they shaped so many childhoods, including mine. So I know a lot of people have a lot of strong opinions about it, so don't kill me for this ranking, but I'm gonna go ahead and put this trilogy at B tier.
But you can't do this to me.
And the reason I'm putting it at B tier,
You know how much I sacrificed?
these movies, as amazing as they are, they show more and more flaws over time. They don't really age well, so a lot of the cheesiness, the campiness, it makes it damn near unwatchable to me. I know that's not a huge thing for a lot of people. I just can't sit through awkward, embarrassing scenes, which these movies have a lot of. But on the other hand, it's not lower on the ranking because they're so well written.
Then we cut to Spider-Man being fed a plate of cookies, and he says,
You got any with nuts?
I have some nuts. I could make some.
Go make me some.
"Go make me some cookies with nuts in them." Now, this is actually a very clever scene when you think about it. In life, there is such a rich variety of cookies, but director Sam Raimi has Spider-Man consciously choose nut cookies to signify that this man has gone nuts.
And that's why so many people hold these movies in such high regard. They do Spider-Man perfectly. So because of what it did for superhero movies and how faithful it is to the comics, coupled with the fact that it is just so dated and so cringy to me, I think B tier is a good spot for it. Alright, next up we got Daredevil. Automatically, I gotta put that at S tier. This used to be almost the perfect Daredevil adaptation, but then She-Hulk came along, and you know, I'll get into all that later. This is one of those shows where it's super faithful to the character and to the source material up to a certain point. It's so well written, it's so well produced, and the tone is so dark and the grittiness of it, and it's just all tied together perfectly. It's the pinnacle of the superhero genre when it comes to staying faithful to the comics and trying to go for a realistic, gritty tone. I just think this is one of those shows where you have to try so hard to not enjoy it. Alright, next up we have The Defenders. I think I speak for everybody when I say this show was kind of a disappointment. This is basically the Avengers of the whole street level Netflix Marvel shows. When I say that it did not disappoint, I'm lying. Not the worst thing in the world, but it was like Daredevil started off amazing, Jessica Jones came out and that was amazing, Luke Cage came out and I'll comment on it later, but it was not the best, and then Iron Fist came out and it was horrible, so the morale was at an all-time low, and then Defenders comes out.
He's one of them, aren't you?
The Hand?
No, there's another organization.
We follow the elders of Kunlun.
The Chaste is my army?
They're all dead now.
How come no one told me?
I don't know.
It starts off really, really good, and like seeing all the characters, first of all, come together was amazing, and then seeing the banter between them and seeing them get along and work together, that was amazing too. But at a certain point, the hype of that wears off, and then the only thing that's keeping the excitement up is a good story, and this did not have that, unfortunately. Alright, next up we have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Honestly, I'm gonna go ahead and just put that straight to D tier, and let me explain why. I really wanted to enjoy this show. I heard a lot about it when it was still airing, so I wanted to kind of get in on, you know, what everyone was so excited about. But my god, there are so many things that it has going for it, and from what I've seen, it never quite fixes what's holding it back. Direction, the writing, the acting, characters, just the way that everything is handled, it's just barely enough to actually keep you intrigued. Everything else is just so fucking boring. It's like you're constantly fighting yourself if you want to actually continue watching the show, because it's so devoid of any style, charisma, anything like actually genuinely exciting. Alright, next up we have She-Hulk, the show that I was sort of excited for and sort of worried about, and my worry won the battle. I don't know. The main thing that I was excited for with the series was seeing Hulk again. I am a big Bruce Banner fan. His mental health journey in the comics is it's so fascinating to me. So I was just excited to see him in this show. Not a huge fan of She-Hulk in the comics. I've just kind of, you know, seen her in the background of stories, read a couple of her issues from like Charles Soule run, and you know, I did enjoy what I read, but unfortunately this show is absolutely nothing like those comics. This version of Jen is essentially the polar opposite. Everything that makes the comic character so likable and so cool is completely just left out of this series. So really what I ended up doing was I just watched the first episode. After that, I was just waiting for Daredevil to appear. I just went straight to that one. That was my favorite live action appearance of Daredevil because it seemed the most like the comic version. That suit is beautiful. He's so charismatic like he's supposed to be in the comics. He's funny. The chemistry between Jen and Matt was amazing, and I really enjoyed it. And then I watched the finale just because I saw that Hulk and Daredevil were gonna appear again, and it was not worth it because the finale fucking sucked. I literally just watched for the appearances of other characters and paid absolutely no attention to the actual story, so I'm not gonna judge this show based off that. I didn't enjoy anything about She-Hulk. For a female empowerment show, it banked off of the popularity of everybody else, and that didn't even work in its favor. Alright, next up we have Miss Marvel. I am so surprised about the amount of hate that this show got. I enjoyed the fuck out of it. It's essentially the perfect coming of age / superhero story that I've seen yet. I was really worried about Kamala being brought to the MCU because of the fact that they changed her powers, all this stuff like changing her origin and all these changes that seem to be unnecessary. You know, in the comics, she got her powers from an event that was tied to the Inhumans, and obviously they weren't gonna do that in the MCU because the Inhumans haven't even appeared yet. So once I realized that, you know, I was able to get over that. The power change, still not my favorite thing ever, but you know, I can live with it, honestly. The main reason that I like the show is the actress for Kamala and the actor from whoever the fuck, Henry from The Walking Dead, whatever the fuck his name is. I like that guy. Those two were great, as well as everyone in Kamala's family. I just love the whole cast of this show. Obviously, I can't speak to any of the cultural elements of the show. I can't speak to how any of that is done or how it's handled or how accurate it is because I don't know anything about it, but there was kind of just a welcoming vibe to the show that I really liked. Originally, her parents were pissing me the fuck off, but then over the course of the show, it's like everyone's kind of better side was getting brought out, and as the show went on, it's just like, it just has this warm vibe that you look for in a coming of age movie or show, and I just really like that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put that in A tier. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. Alright, next up we have Thor: Love and Thunder. Alright, I had so many people coming for me for my ranking of Ragnarok in the last MCU tier list, but I absolutely stand by it. The main thing is I just don't like how these characters are handled. So going into Love and Thunder, I was kind of worried, but the more I started to hear about Jane Foster was gonna be in it, Gore the God Butcher was confirmed to be the villain, I was like cautiously optimistic. I loved the storyline from the comics. Jason Aaron's Thor, absolutely amazing. His whole run from God of Thunder to Mighty Thor, I loved all of that. And then when this movie came out, I heard all the fucking shit about how it was horrible, the VFX were terrible, none of the characters were handled right, everything was just trying too hard to be funny. It seemed like it was trying to make up for a lack of story. That's essentially what I expected. So I was hearing all this and then I was like, okay, well I should probably sit down and actually try and watch the movie. And then I got 5 minutes through it and I had to turn it off. Alright, we have Jessica Jones. I really enjoyed this series. I honestly can't remember any problems that I had with it while watching it. I will say it never quite lived up to how good it was in the first season. You know, they set a high bar with Kilgrave and that whole season was just so good. They definitely weren't ever at that point after season 1. Alright, next up we got Luke Cage. This show when it first came out was absolutely amazing. It was a breath of fresh air. Just the atmosphere of the show. Even if the plot was moving very slowly, it was like you didn't care because you were just kind of taking everything in. Such an amazing cast, first of all. And then you got someone like Luke Cage as the main character, played by Mike Coulter. There's just such a strong likability about him because of the respect that he has. The fact that he's like never trying to get into a fight, and then when he's pushed to his limit, then he does some badass shit. I like that element of the show a lot. I think if they were going to do a realistic approach to Luke Cage, I don't know if there was a better way they could have done it. But eventually, the charm of the show kind of wears off when the more glaring issues with the plot and the story and the character deaths and writing decisions start to come through a little bit more, and you're just kind of like, what the fuck? You just ruined it. I don't know. Everything that was so cool about it was temporary. It felt like everything moved along so slowly because of the fact that they just did not have a story for the hour-long episodes that it had. At some point, it started to feel like 4 important things happened every episode, and everything else was just filler. So many concert montages that did not need to be there and just seemed like they were put in for the sake of filling up time, and I really was not a fan of that at all. I had a hard time enjoying it. Those first couple episodes, like I said, I really enjoyed, but after that it just kind of fell off. I'm gonna go ahead and put that in D tier. Alright, then we have the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Here's what I'll say about these movies. I feel like I could go on forever about these, but I'll try and keep it short. The movies themselves are just average. What really makes these movies work is Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man and Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. Everything else about these movies can fuck off. The way they handle their villains, side characters, story choices, you know, all of that shit has been criticized to death, so I won't even bother going into it. But Andrew Garfield, just amazing. I'm biased to Andrew Garfield just because I love him as an actor. Go watch Under the Silver Lake and Tick Tick Boom. I don't know. I really like these movies, but they do have their problems. I'm gonna go ahead and put these at C tier. Alright, I wasn't even sure if I was supposed to put this in here. Wikipedia says it's canon. Everyone else kind of has just ignored it. I still have yet to watch it, but I definitely will. For now, I Am Groot is going into haven't seen. Alright, next up we have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I'm really not sure where I stand with this movie. I think it was a good character arc for Stephen Strange. It was nice to see him as the main character again and see him struggle as opposed to what he's done in the last few movies in the MCU where he's just kind of the side character that fixes everything. It was nice to see him at the forefront and see him as more of a realized character again. Everything with the character of Doctor Strange in this movie was done well, I think. What really disappointed me about it was the horror aspect. I was going into this hoping to see some like actual like scary vibes, you know, even if it wasn't like outright horror because it's a Disney movie, obviously, because it was painted as the first MCU horror movie. They kept promoting it as that. They kept marketing it as the first horror movie in the MCU. That whole aspect of it fell completely flat. This was not a horror movie in any way. I wasn't expecting it to be like rated R or anything like that because, like I said, it's a Disney movie, but I was expecting some horror. That's like the only thing that I was excited for. I'm just gonna go ahead and put it in C tier. It was not the worst thing in the world, but I was hoping for so much better. better, man. Next up, we got Moon Knight. I was a huge fan of Moon Knight in the comics. The idea of him being brought to the MCU kind of felt far-fetched. Before his show was announced, it was all happy-go-lucky, lighthearted movies. I also didn't want the character to be brought to the MCU. There was just such a worry about him being done right. Like, everything that makes the character cool would have been completely removed. That was kind of the fear, and I feel like my worries were completely justified and proven correct. It feels like they at least made an attempt to properly adapt the character, but then for everything they do right, they do like 2 more things that are completely fucking awful. It was somehow not what I was expecting from a Moon Knight show, and it was exactly what I was expecting at the same time. Next up, we got the Inhumans. This show was made by the same guy who did Iron Fist, Scott Buck, so the reason this show felt so cheap and poorly made and just under budget is because it was. Everything that's bad about Iron Fist is bad about this show as well. I'm not even gonna go on a rant. We all know this show is fucking terrible. If they ever bring these characters back to the MCU, they need to do the exact opposite of what they did here. Going into F tier, no surprise there. Alright, next up we got Werewolf by Night. Came out of nowhere, and I'm so glad that they made it and just kind of put it out to like test the waters. This was so good. I liked him in the comics. I never expected that he would be brought to the MCU, and here he is, and it's amazing. I'm glad they made this into a special instead of a series. I feel like this absolutely thrived in that 1 hour, and it absolutely would not have thrived as like a 6-episode piece of shit. I really enjoyed this, and it felt like something different for the MCU, which is very much needed, especially now. Every time they do something like this where the tone is fresh, they choose like less popular people so that they can do something interesting without like such high expectations. I feel like those projects always thrive, and this is no exception. Great special, great characters, great short, simple story. I'm just gonna go ahead and put that in B tier. Not the best thing ever, but I think that what they were trying to accomplish was done really well. Alright, and last but not least, we have Netflix's Punisher. I really enjoyed this show through and through. This only got 2 seasons, but I thought both of them were great. John Bernthal as Frank Castle is amazing. First of all, I just like him as an actor. I have ever since The Walking Dead. And then to see him in this, he just plays the role so amazingly. The big part of the show is PTSD. It's not just Frank Castle going around, you know, killing people all the time. It's a lot of what happens after the war and how soldiers are treated in society and how they deal with that, and how war can change someone once they come back home, which is a big reason why the Punisher became who he is. It's not just that his family was killed, it was also because of his time in the field. It's nice to see something where it's not propaganda for the military, it's not, you know, trying to villainize the military, it's more putting a spotlight on corruption inside of it and the humans underneath the camouflage, and I really like that aspect of it a lot. I really enjoyed this show for what it was. I gotta give that a solid A tier. So there you have it, guys. That is my list. I will put up a side-by-side comparison with my list from the last video if you want to see how these rankings relate to one another. If you want to see a part 2 for the other Marvel movies like the X-Men and Fantastic Four franchises, let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments down below if you agree or disagree with any of my rankings here. But that is all I have for you guys today, so until next time, I will catch you later. Thanks for watching.